Welcome to Our Town, a 30-minute podcast brought to you by Best Bark Communications, a small but fierce client-centered marketing company powered by decades of experience and well-established business networks.
This is Our Town. This is Andy Ockershausen, and we're talking and going to talk to Roger Cossack, the 1999 Vanity Fair, one of the movers and shakers of Washington, radio, TV, and broadcast. 1999. Do you remember that year, Raj?
I was going to say that must be another Roger Cossack.
Vanity Fair of all my. What happened to broadcasting and USA Today and so forth?
No, they never recognized
Sports
me.
Illustrated. But Roger, tell us, now you are from the West Coast. You're a West Coast guy.
Yep.
But you grace our town and have for many years, and we are really appreciative. Tell me about your early life on the coast, L.A.
Well, I went to UCLA undergraduate and UCLA
Where'd
law
you go to
school.
school? I mean, to grammar school.
I went to Cherimoy Avenue Grammar School, but probably the most notable place I went was I went to Hollywood High School.
Hollywood High.
I went to Hollywood High School, and my claim to fame is that I sat next to Ricky Nelson, and we both sat on the bench for the football team. And neither one of us played too much.
Right.
That's
what a famous, fabulous high school. Hollywood High.
It was.
Was it on Sunset?
It was on Highland Avenue. It is on Highland Avenue between Sunset and Hollywood Boulevard. It was a great time to go to Hollywood High School.
Oh my God!
And it was a fun time to go. And
celebrity school, right?
Well, yeah, there were a lot of celebrities who went there. I'm trying to think of some of them. I think, as I told you, Ricky Nelson, but I can't remember any of them now. But there were some, and there were always, pretty girls who were leaving to go be in the movies.
A lot of friends of mine from ABC Television who lived on the West Coast, their kids went to Hollywood High when they were coming up in the business, and it was so important that they get that L.A. feeling. And why would you then go to school? You went down the road to UCLA.
Well, UCLA, it was a very good reason, Andy.
Did your family live down there?
Well, my family lived in Los Angeles, but
Los Angeles?
Not so much. We lived in Hollywood, and the reason that I went to UCLA is because a very good reason was that UCLA it was and is a public university, and that was where I could afford to go to school, and it was inexpensive.
One of the most gorgeous campuses in the free world.
It's a beautiful place. It was a great opportunity for me to be able to go there. It was very inexpensive and get a great education. In fact, I loved it so much I stayed 6 years. There was a couple of little interruptions,
Roger,
which we won't go into. But nevertheless, I stayed 6 years, and then the UCLA Law School let me in, and I was able to get a legal education at UCLA Law School.
Did Ricky go with you? No,
Ricky went on to bigger and better things.
His children became huge stars, correct? His twin boys, I think.
I'm not
huge stars.
I'm not sure, but
they had that Ricky Nelson background.
Yeah.
And he knows. JJ knows. So, Roger, and then you decided to follow the law. Was that the family trait? Was your dad a lawyer?
My dad was
showbiz?
No. My dad was a secondhand furniture dealer. And my mother worked in the store.
She probably kept the book.
I was the first person in my family to get a college education. I think perhaps the first person to graduate high school because my parents were children of the Depression.
Right.
And they, in those days you went to work, and so
you had to go to work to live.
That's right. So I was the first one, and my mother was I remember was very, very serious about me getting an education, and pushed it and made sure, so for someone like me, UCLA was an incredible opportunity.
Oh, what an opportunity.
Because I couldn't have gone to a private school. We just didn't have
couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
But you were there in the glory years of UCLA athletics, particularly in basketball, correct?
That's right.
Was John Wooden still there?
John Wooden was there, and I was able to see Kareem and of course,
Lou Alcindor
when he was there, and of course later on I was already graduated, but Bill Walton played, and UCLA won that national basketball championship 10 out of 11 years.
And incredible.
We used to think it wasn't such a big deal as it is today, so we used to think of it as our own private little tournament out there. There was what's going to happen? Oh, UCLA is going to play in that tournament that we always win.
Was Pauley Pavilion built when you were there?
It just was built. Yeah, it was new when I was there.
State of the art.
When I was an undergraduate, they used to go downtown and play at the sports arena, and then later on, I think when I was in law school, they finished Pauley Pavilion.
And that is a great venue. I read something somewhere about it's getting old. It's getting age on it. And
Well,
they're talking about doing something.
they just remodeled it.
Is
they
that
did
it?
remodel it a couple of years ago, and they sort of brought it up to date. But it's always going to be Poly for us.
Fabulous
Obviously,
place.
yeah.
And then the UCLA's had its its football years too. I don't want to get bogged down on UCLA, but for some reason I followed it over the years. And we had a guy named Gary Beban, was the #1 draft choice of the Washington Redskins, believe it or not.
Yeah, he won.
That's when I got the word.
That's when Gary was there one year. He won the Heisman Trophy. And,
Is that right?
Yeah,
Gary did. I did not know that. But
Yeah,
they had great. Tim Brandt, who you know,
right?
who you work with right here at WML, his son.
His son played for UCLA.
He was a cornerback for UCLA. Kevin.
Absolutely.
So we do have a tie-in. My tie-in with Tim and you and UCLA is so great, and they had a great tough time last weekend with Stanford, but that's another story.
Yeah, I don't want to go into that.
But so you
painful.
followed the law and became an attorney.
Yep.
And then you work for the state or the city.
I went to work for the district attorney's office when I got out of law school, and I worked for them.
Were you a paralegal? Were you actually?
No, I was a deputy
practicing attorney?
DA. I passed the bar, and they hired me as a deputy district attorney, and I stayed with them for 3 years, and I liked criminal law. I thought that was the thing I wanted to do. And I thought
you were a prosecutor.
I was a prosecutor, and I thought that was a great way to kind of learn the trade, and it was. And so I stayed
L.A. for the
LA,
area or the county?
No, L.A. County DA's office. And so
Okay.
you went around the different parts of the county, and then eventually they assigned you to a certain place, and I stayed, and I learned what was going on. And then after about 3 years, I thought I heard the call of academia, and I went and joined the faculty at UCLA Law School.
Wow.
And I stuck around there for a couple of years, and I realized that academia, while it's certainly a noble thing to do, probably wasn't for me. And after 2 years at the law school, I decided I'd go into private practice. Now, I don't know what I was thinking about. I mean, I think this is the craziness of youth. I went down into Westwood, which is where UCLA is, the
Gorgeous.
little village down there.
Yeah.
I rented an office, told everybody I was in practice, sent out some announcements, and sat behind my desk and thought, this is the way it's supposed to work.
That's the way it is in the movies.
And, honest to goodness, from the day I opened up, I had clients. I don't know where they came from. I don't know what they had in mind hiring me. But I had clients.
Were you a specialist? Did you?
Yeah,
specialize?
I did criminal defense.
Oh, I see.
And in those days, Andy, in California, I suppose every place else, it was a time when smoking marijuana was very illegal, and young people went to jail for that. And so I had my office full because I knew, the kids knew me, the students knew me from law school, from undergraduate, and I'd been around for a while.
You had an image of some kind.
I would have parents with these poor young kids who got caught with, 1 or 2 marijuana cigarettes, and were looking at going to jail. So, I had clients, and I started little by little to build a reputation, and
as a good defender,
as a person you could come to, hopefully, and do a good job, and I built a practice, and after a while, I decided that really where I wanted to be was not so much in the state courts, but in the federal courts. I wanted to do a federal criminal defense practice, and so I, little by little, began to build myself up and built up a practice.
Was that a different bar you had to pass, or was it the same?
No, it's the same bar, but it's a different jurisdiction. Federal
Yeah.
court was where the bigger cases were.
Uncle Sam.
Uncle Sam. They would announce the case. They would say, the United States of America versus Joe Johnson, and somebody would stand up and say, here I am for the United States of America, and here I would get up and say, Roger Cossack for Joe Johnson, and I would be thinking to myself, bring on the United States of America, and bring on Puerto Rico while you're at it. I'll take you all on. So,
Roger, that's great. The eminent attorney, a Washington native named Edward Bennett Williams, told me a story.
A great attorney.
But Ed Williams said, he said, in spite of all these years I've been in the business, he said, when I stand up to defend a client and I hear the United States of America, he said, that even in my doting age here, that was always something important.
Yeah.
I'm fighting Uncle Sam.
Well, that's the way I felt about it. And I enjoyed being a criminal defense lawyer. I enjoyed the work. I mean, it's tough work. It's serious work.
There's not much travel. Did you travel around to the different courtrooms?
I began to. That's one of the things that happens in federal court is that you can go all over the country. And so as I built up my practice and my reputation, I began to get cases in different parts of the country and different states and different jurisdictions, and I enjoyed that. I was young. I enjoyed traveling. I enjoyed getting on those airplanes and going to different cities.
Were you still living at home?
No, I was married. And
you got married. We didn't get to that.
Yeah, I got married and
a co-ed when you were at UCLA.
No, this is after I got out of UCLA. I met a woman and. We got married and had a son, and I have a son who lives in Manassas.
He does? Yeah. Roger, of all these years, I never knew that.
I have a son and a grandson and a daughter.
They're right here with you.
Here with me.
Did they come here with you? Or
no, they coincidentally came later on, and so I'm very happy about that. And
and live in Manassas. Yeah, great living.
They live in Manassas.
Don't drive out there on a weekend, though, because the trapfic's terrible.
The only time I visit them is on Sunday afternoons at 4 o'clock. So Roger. that was it, and I built up that practice, and but little by little, and I came here one time and had the opportunity to argue before the United States Supreme Court.
Is that right?
Yeah, and did that in 1984 and argued a case and didn't win, but
you had your voice.
I had my voice and I had my moment. I lost 6-3. Sounds like a baseball score, doesn't it? And but nevertheless, it was a.
That was only your one and only time before the court.
My one and only time before the United States Supreme Court, but it was probably the most exciting legal moment of my life. I mean, I remember that. Since that time, I'll tell you who was with. My mother was there, and my son was there, and my wife was there. And unfortunately, since that time, my wife had passed away. And my mother, of course, had passed away, but they were both there with me. And it's
great to see you in front of the bench, huh?
It was a great moment for me and for them.
Rehnquist, that was the Rehnquist court?
You bet. Rehnquist was there, and
the characters. Scalia.
Yeah. No, Scalia wasn't there yet. But the great Thurgood Marshall was there.
Oh, good. So you got in front of the leaders of the court.
I was right there in front of the United States Supreme Court. It was great, like I say, I think if you're going to be a lawyer and if you're going to think you're going to be in front of, you're going to do trial work, there's no greater moment than to be in front of the United States Supreme Court. So even though I didn't win, and it would hurt, I wanted to win.
You went to bat, though. That is America, right?
I got in the batter's box.
There are winners and losers.
Yeah, and I went up there a winner. I had won that case at the district court level. I'd won that case in the Court of Appeals, and the government appealed it to the United States Supreme Court, and they took it. And the United States Supreme Court reversed the decision. But I went up there a winner, so, of course, that, I guess $1.50 buys you a cup of coffee today. Maybe $2.
Who coined the phrase, you can't win them all?
Yeah.
We're talking to Roger Cossack, and a great stories, Roger, and this is our town. This is our town. It's Andy Ockershausen, and I get all excited with Roger. We're going to go into the rest of your life now, Roger.
All right.
This is Sonny Jurgensen. Got a confession to make. I let my wife drag me to one of those Mike Collins estate planning seminars. Like I don't have enough on my plate with a certain football team. Actually, it wasn't too bad. In fact, we both learned a whole lot about how to protect our kids and grandkids down the road and to take care of ourselves right now. So if you get one of Mike's invitations in the mail, go. I'm glad I did. Get all the information and register online at MikeCollins.com. That's MikeCollins.com.
You're listening to Our Town with Andy Ockershausen. Brought to you by Best Bark Communications.
We're listening and talking with Roger Cossack, a very famous attorney, a television guy. Roger, how in the world did you get into television, and how you made such a big impact in this sports world?
Well, Andy, I'm going to tell you the exact true story.
Okay,
of what
so far it's been true.
Everything's been true, but I'm going to give you details that I usually don't share with the public.
Okay.
In 1991, my wife passed away. And
you were still on the West Coast?
I was still on the West Coast, and she died very young from breast cancer. And it was a sad time. And I would say that for a few years after that, I was at odds, you say. And
naturally so.
I didn't really know what to do, and And so after a couple of years, I had made some decisions about what I was going to do. I'd practiced law, I'd continued practicing, but I'd reached a point where I just didn't know. I was thinking about going back into the university. I just was unclear about how I wanted to spend the rest of my life. And in 1994, I had made a decision to at least suspend practicing law for a while and take some time and figure out what else there was for me to do if I wanted to change directions. Now, truthfully, one of the things you realize quickly when you spent your whole life as a lawyer is that you realize pretty much if you're not a lawyer for about 2 weeks, you realize that the reason you've been a lawyer is because there's not much else in the world you can do. You know, short of changing light bulb, I can't build anything. I'm not particularly handy, And so, the notion that I was going to spend my life skiing sounded good, but wasn't going to happen. So while I was trying to figure out what I was going to do with the rest of my life, in June of 1994, the O.J. Simpson matter occurred.
Aha.
And I was home on a Sunday, and it was the Sunday following that Friday chase that everybody saw on the automobile chase.
The Bronco
chase. And I was home. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and I got a call from a guy named David Margolick. Now, at that time, David Margolick wrote the At the Bar column for the New York Times. He was the legal editor for the New York Times. And I knew him because we had met over a case or two that I had handled. And he called and he said, I got to talk to you. I have to write a piece for the New York Times on OJ, and I need some quotes from an LA criminal defense lawyer, and you got to help me out. It was 4 o'clock on that Sunday afternoon, and I said...
That's 2 days later.
2 days later, I said, David, I just don't have a lot of time for this. And he said, you got to do this for me. I said, all right, 15 minutes. So we spoke for 15 minutes, and I talked to him about California criminal law. And that was I didn't think anything about it. And I went and did whatever I did. The next morning, I had the phone next to the bed, and the phone rang, and I remember it was 6 a.m. I looked at the clock, it was 6 a.m., and I thought, who could be calling me at 6 o'clock
on a Monday morning?
On a Monday morning. I pick up the phone, and it was a producer from CNN. We'd like to talk to you about OJ, and would you come in and be on television and talk about OJ? And I said, how do you even know who I am? And she said, well, haven't you seen the New York Times? Because it's 9 o'clock in New York and 6 o'clock here. And I said, no. And she said, well, there's a 5-page or 6-page story on OJ.
Oh, yeah.
And you're quoted a half a dozen times in there. And
by your friend Margolick.
My friend Margolick. So would you come on and talk to us? Well, I'd never been on television in my life. I thought, well, this will be fun. And I told you I was sort of trying to figure out what to do with the next phase. I said, well, this will be fun. And I was very familiar with that Andy Warhol quote about 15 minutes of fame. And I knew it, and I thought, well, this is going to be my 15 minutes of fame. And then when it's over, I'll go back to trying to figure out what I'm going to do the rest of my life. But I thought this will last a week or so, or 2 days, whatever. And so they said, okay, what time are you going to pick me up? Okay, they're going to pick me up.
They sent a car to pick you up.
They sent a car. Nobody'd ever sent a car to pick me up. I thought this
Not
was...
even Supreme Court.
Big limousine shows up. My neighbors thought this is the greatest. I thought it was the greatest. And they'd pull up, and I would get in the car. And it was the first show I did was Nightline with Ted Koppel. And Ted Koppel, I get in the chair, and I sit down, and Ted Koppel in that voice, hello, joining us today. And he sits down and he says, joining us tonight is California criminal defense lawyer Roger Cossack, who's the leading expert on the O.J. Simpson trial. So I start to say, wait a minute, I don't know anything about the O.J. Simpson case, except what I read in the paper. But before I could say anything, he asks a question, and what he's asking about is California law.
Right, that's right.
That I do know about.
What happens in California.
That I know about. So I start answering, and we're going back and forth.
And it's a criminal case in
I
LA.
know this stuff. So he says, and it's Roger this and Roger that. So finally I get up all the nerve. Well, Ted, it was like Ted and Roger. This is great. So we did it, and the next day, would you be on Good Morning America? And I thought, well, this is terrific. And I really thought this was going to be over in a week.
And you're doing this pro bono.
Pro bono.
Good.
And so after about 2 weeks, CNN, there was a thing, and one of the things in the O.J. Simpson case was he was in custody, so he wouldn't waive time, meaning that he wouldn't put off his preliminary hearing. They wanted it right away. So they had that preliminary hearing right away within, I think, 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And CNN called and said, would you be our legal analyst for the preliminary hearing? And I said, yeah, but you got to pay me if you're going to do that. Now you want me in there every day. So they made a deal. They paid me, and I did it. And of course, I thought this preliminary hearing was going to be over in 2 weeks. Of course, I think it lasted 2 months or 6 weeks.
And you're feeding reports to CNN.
I'm going in every day, sitting on the thing.
There was the lawyers from all over the world were out
being
there
on television. Greta, that was when
TV.
Greta Van Susteren and I started, and we did the preliminary hearing.
Was
and then,
Greta with you out there? Or was
no,
she
Greta
here?
was in Washington.
Okay.
So then that's over, and the woman who produced the show, I said to her, wow, this was really fun. Thank you very much. Now I thought, it's over, and I thank you very much. And I've never worked with a producer before. This is really terrific for me. It's all a brand new responsibility. Goodbye. And I went home, and as I got home, my receptionist at the law firm called and said, what did you tell this person from CNN? I said, I told her goodbye.
Right.
And she said, well, I don't know, but some vice president from CNN has been calling here all morning saying, don't sign with anybody until you talk to us. I didn't even know what they were talking about. Sign what?
You got a product.
So the next day they called and they made us an offer. They said, well, would you be the legal analyst for the trial? Of course, I thought the trial was going to last a month. It lasted a year and a half, 14 months or 13, whatever it was. Or let me see, it started in January. I think it was over in October. And so maybe it was at 10 months. And during the trial, CNN said, we'd like you to, we want to start this show, and would you come to Washington? And I said, okay. I mean, it was like foolishness. I mean, okay. And I came, and I thought this thing was going to last 6 months, because I thought this is going to last right until we stop talking about OJ. And when we stop talking about OJ, the sound you hear is going to be people turning us off, because who wants to watch two lawyers talking about legal matters every day? Well, what shows you what I know. That show took off.
It was amazing.
And went for almost seven years. Went from 95 to 2002. And that's
all on CNN.
All on CNN. Every day, 5 days a week. And I kept thinking that I was going back to California to be a lawyer.
Where's your son? He's still out on the coast?
My son was, I think, was up in Rhode Island, and then it was, and I kept saying to my law partner, to my friends in law, I'll be back. The
business is still operating.
Yeah,
huh?
well, yeah, other people, but as you guys know, when you sign your first contract, you don't have any bargaining power at all.
No, that's
and
right.
I didn't know anything. So I signed a contract. I'm ashamed to admit this, but it's true. I signed a contract that guaranteed them 3 years of my time, and they guaranteed me 5 6-month options, so that every 6 months they could have fired me.
Right.
So
I thought 6 months contract.
So I thought every 6 months I thought I was going to get fired. And it kept just going on and on and on and on and on. I kept saying, don't worry, I'll be home in 4 months. I'll be ready to do things. But it just kept going on and on and on. And then one day I realized it wasn't going to end. When it ended at CNN, so from 95 to 2002.
You're working with Greta all that time?
I'm working with Greta. Greta goes to Fox. I'm out thinking, well, what am I going to do? And while I'm thinking about it.
They didn't ask you at Fox at the time?
We never got that far.
Okay.
I was ready to sort of, I'd had enough,
Okay.
And I thought, I didn't really, the things were changed a little bit. And so I was thinking, well, what do I want to do? ESPN calls and says, we have this crazy thing that happened where some guy from the Pittsburgh Pirates tripped one of the mascots that were having some race, and one guy came out to, would you come on as kind of a joke and talk about what the legal. So I said, sure. I thought ESPN, this will be fun. So I went on ESPN thinking that was a one-time deal. And sure enough, about a week or two later, I get a call, and we think we need a legal analyst. And I said, it shows you what a brilliant, so far you know what a brilliant businessman I am. So I said, what do you need a legal analyst for? You guys, it's a sports network. Well, we think that more and more there's legal issues that we're involved with. And I said, I don't think so. This isn't for me. I don't know. So we kept putting it off. And I
Had you gone back to the coast, or you still
No,
here?
I was still in Washington. By that time, I'd kind of fallen in love with Washington.
Yeah, you were our guy. Being in our town took you
and
over.
I really loved it. And so I just kept thinking, well, I don't know, it'll come to me any minute now. And they kept saying, and then boom, the Kobe Bryant case happens. So ESPN said, well, listen, you don't have to sign up just go do the Kobe Bryant case.
Where you go, Colorado? Is that where they sent you?
Yeah, Colorado. And then just do that, and we'll talk about everything else afterwards. I said, okay. I figured Kobe Bryant, what's that going to do? Take a month? All right, a year later, now the Kobe Bryant case is over, and I've been going back and forth to Colorado. Now I come back, and somebody from ESPN calls and says, no, all right, we're through messing around with you. You're either going to take this, we need a legal analyst. It's either going to be you or it's going to be somebody else. What do you want to do? So I said, this is a great job. This is a fantastic opportunity. These are great people. It's the kind of thing I want to do where it's not every single day.
You were like on call, though, correct?
I always say full-time, part-time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what happened. Honestly.
Had greatness thrust upon you, more or less, huh?
Well, I mean, honestly, that's exactly what happened.
Well, Roger, I know, following your career and seeing you on television, knowing what you were doing, was a revelation that I had been listening to from a guy who used to work for us named Ken Beatrice. He said his mantra was, sports is no longer sports, it's a legal experience for the players and the owners. Everybody's into legal. And he was right.
I think what's happened is sports is obviously such a big business and it's become part of the American culture.
And money, big
once it becomes part of American culture, there's other parts of American culture. Law is a part of American culture, and once you get sports has become so much a part, obviously there's going to be law involved.
Well, Roger, this has been so entertaining, so interesting. We're going to take another break and come back and talk to you about some personalities that you have, quote, covered, uncovered.
Hi, Tony Sybil here to tell everybody about our newest restaurant over off New York Avenue. It's called Ivy City Smokehouse, 1356 Oakey Street Northeast, right next to the Heck Company warehouse. It is terrific, and we have the only seafood smoker in the District of Columbia. So when you go to your grocery stores or your delis, ask for Ivy City products. 202-529-3300 or ivycitysmokehouse.com.
Our Town with Andy Ockershausen.
This is Our Town, and Andy Ockershausen talking to Roger Cossack, the world's most famous sports analyst, attorney, lawyer. The difference between an attorney and a lawyer is money. You understand that, of course.
I understand that. Of course, the category is a rather narrow category, so
But Roger, now ESPN has hired you to do something that was probably so far from your mind when you came east, was being a legal analyst for a sports network.
Right.
What a revelation.
Right. I never thought, as I told you earlier, it never occurred to me that a sports network needed a legal analyst. But if you think about it now, and look backward, you see how sports is today so much part of the American fabric and what America's all about. And once you get into making sports so much part of our culture, then law gets in there also.
And big money, Roger. Big bucks.
Huge money.
Now, Roger, some of the people that you covered, in addition to O.J. Simpson trial, you covered the Kobe. You went to Colorado. Remember when you left town, said, I'll be back quickly.
Yeah, I'll be back in a week. Yeah, a year later I came to see you guys.
Did you get any interest with Kobe, any byplay at all? You just see him?
No, I'll tell you a story, though. When we were up, you know how cynical the press can be. We were up there, and Kobe would fly in. He was playing for the Lakers.
He was still playing.
And playing quite well. And he would fly in for the preliminary hearing. They'd fly him in on a private jet. He'd get off the plane. And they'd immediately bring him over to the courthouse. And
escort, of course.
Escort him. And I think the hearing would go from 9 to whatever, 9:30 to 4. And then they'd take him right on a plane or right on a car, and they take him right back to the airport, and he'd fly back to L.A.
He could play that night if necessary.
And he could play that night if necessary. So what did they have? Maybe 2-3.
Who's playing for the airplane? The Lakers or is Kobe playing?
They never quite told me that one. But that was what he would do. And he would. So the press would sit there, and we would see him go in, and he was unbelievable. He would score. He would sit in that courtroom all day and then go home and score 40. That's when Kobe was Kobe, and he could really score. So I remember one time we used to have this pool. How many points would he score? I mean, it was so we'd all so we'd sit around and we'd all everybody would chip in the pool, and he would get 40, 30, 45, and so one night I think I said 50 or something, and he came darn close to it, and I won the money. I mean, it was but he was just he was really. Was a great basketball player. It was an interesting case. He and we all remember, he was charged with a sexual assault, and it's one of those he said, she said, and
no witnesses,
and no one who heard anything, and there were. It was clear that from the evidence, as I recall, that the alleged victim in this case knew he had checked in under an assumed name. But she knew who he was, and she was a young woman, and when he checked in, I remember the testimony was, I think, that she volunteered to take him to his room. And
one thing led to another.
One thing led to something. But as you recall, they went to trial, and after about 3-4 days, the district attorney said, we're not going forward, and that was that.
And then he flew back to the Lakers.
And he flew back to the Lakers.
In the point. Now, how about Roger Clemens?
Roger Clemens was right here in
a criminal case.
It was a criminal case. It was for perjury. It was right here in the federal court.
Oh, that's right, U.S. Right.
Right here in federal court in Washington D.C. I got to speak to Clemens during that matter. I knew his lawyer. I know his lawyer.
He used a Washington attorney.
No, he used a. Where's Rusty from? Why do I want to say Texas? Texas. He's from Houston, and I know his lawyer. He's a terrific guy, and so during the trial, he introduced me to Clemens, and I got to speak to Clemens a few times during the trial.
He was a Texan, wasn't he not?
Yes.
Originally?
Yeah, Clemens is a Texan, and the government put on a case. The issue was, remember, Clemens testified before the Senate, volunteered to testify before the Senate, and he got up and he said, I never ever used steroids. Well, then they brought in his the trainer or something who said that I furnished him with steroids, and then they pushed for a perjury citation, which they got. But this was a prosecution that
shouldn't have happened.
It shouldn't have happened, and they really had very little evidence. And it turned out the trainer was a guy who did not come across to the jury. I mean, the jury was almost laughing at the guy, and I think
he was not credible. I remember that story.
No, it was a very weak prosecution, and they just didn't have much evidence. So that was Roger Clemens, and
but it grabbed the sports headlines.
Grabbed the
so
sports
huge
headlines
at the time.
Yeah,
because there were a lot of people standing in line too, right, to get charged.
Yeah, this was a big case, and Clemens, this was when they were going to make an example, I suppose, of Clemens, and it just didn't work for him.
And then you covered the I guess the hearing and the trial of Jerry Sandusky at your at school, at your old alma mater,
not me. No, I'm a UCLA guy. No, but Jerry Sandusky, I was up there for the entire trial with the great Jeremy Schaap, Dick Schaap's son. And we did that for 2-3 weeks, whatever that matter was.
Did you have to live up there at the time?
Yeah, and there were some great guys up there covering that case. The guy from Yahoo, why can't I think of his name right now? Joe Drape from the New York Times, and Jeremy Schaap, and there was about a half a dozen of us. And there was this wonderful, wonderful bar in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania called the Hotel. It was a Hotel Doty, the Doty Hotel, and it had a bar that was so. It was like out of a movie. It was the kind of bar where there'd be
working class Pennsylvania,
where there would be a drummer and a saxophonist and people dancing in the bar, and they proudly displayed on the wall when you walked into this place an exemption from the Pennsylvania Clean Air Act so that people could smoke in this bar. So it wasn't bad enough that it was the sleaziest bar that you could find within 50 miles. People smoked in it. But so we used to, after work, we'd go over there and hang out at the Hotel Doty, a whole group of us, and hang out at that bar and drink Pabst Blue Ribbon. It was just a great one with these great writers. And it was just and Jeremy Shapp, and it was just a wonderful experience. And now I'll let you in on a little secret, probably get me fired from ESPN. But the jury came in that night, and the jury came in, I guess it was about 8:30, 9 o'clock. And we knew they'd been out, and we were thinking, are they coming back? Are they not coming back? And we'll go over to the Hotel Doty, and they're not coming back tonight. Well, of course, after about we're just sitting down, getting ready to rumble, and all of a sudden we get them noticed. So they send somebody over to tell us, get back there. The jury's back, and we were all in the bar. So that was that, and that was of all the cases I've ever tried, if I've ever worked on, reported on. This is the one. This and the Duke lacrosse are the two that stick out in my mind the most, because
you were involved in that. The Duke lacrosse. Were you representing any of the kids?
No. I was just reporting on it.
Oh, you're just reporting, right?
And I will just say that Penn State Sandusky case, I sat in that courtroom and listened to the evidence. And you cannot help, you know how we get. You hear this stuff, you can't remember it 5 minutes after you hear it because you hear so much of this stuff. But that was a case that when you listen to those kids get up and testify as to what they said Sandusky did to them, and how helpless they were, and how I think at least other people knew or should have known what was going on. It's the kind of thing that you wake up in the middle of the night, and it's horrible. And you wake up in the middle of the night, you just can't. You can't stop thinking about it, and it's a nightmare. So that was Sandusky, and the Duke case was another one that I worked on, and that was a case I think that taught us all a lesson, which is the presumption of innocence really does mean something, because here were all these kids, young men who got arrested, and everybody, and the narrative was, rich kids on Duke,
I know
obviously
the story.
taken care of, obviously dealing, this young African woman who's supposed to be a prostitute. I mean, the whole narrative was such, and they took advantage of her, and
it was the rich against the poor,
against the poor, et cetera, et cetera. And then, of course, it turns out not to be true, and it turns out there was a crazy prosecutor who was alleged.
The Evans boy we know real well.
Yeah.
Brendan knew him at school at St. Albans, and Evans and his mother was a very dear friend of mine. So was his father. There were two kids from here that really got charged for the thing, and they. I guess it ruined their lives up to a certain point.
I mean, and the lesson from that is, and I talk about this, not so much anymore, but during that time I talked about it. I said the presumption of innocence really does mean something, and when we forget about it, things like this happen. And I mean the presumption that all these kids were guilty, and then of course there was no evidence, and it turned out there was a prosecutor who was eventually disbarred.
Oh, absolutely. He looked like he was somebody like he was on the take or something.
Yeah.
He was determined to crucify these kids, rich and poor.
Yeah.
He was resentful of the Duke's.
Yeah.
What is it? The Duke way of life, I guess you call it.
He was running for election and re-election, and I don't think anybody ever really understood why he did what he did, but he did it, and with that kind of power, you can ruin people's lives. You have a tremendous amount of power as a prosecutor, and you have to use it wisely and judiciously.
Incredible. Now you've got another life that you share with us, that you're going back to California to teach again at Pepperdine.
My 11th year.
11 years. I can't believe that.
I know, me neither. I'm such a young guy.
Well, in addition to teaching it, the people ask you to come. Do you do in the speaking circuit? Do you appear before groups and explain the law and what's going on and so forth? Get paid?
I do. I do some speaking. I go out to California. They've been very good to me. Just my 11th year.
It's a marvelous school, great law school, correct?
It's a good law school. It's fun to be in California. When it gets cold here, I'm out there in the warm, lovely weather.
I'm getting paid.
Yeah, I'm from that Southern California area, so I have a lot of friends I went to school with who live in that area that I go back and visit. And it's a great way for me to stay in contact with wonderful old friends.
2 or 3 months it lasts?
3 months.
That's something to look forward to. I mean, you've been blessed in a lot of ways. I'm sorry you lost your wife, but you still have a life.
Andy, it took me a lot of years to come to that conclusion, and I'm very fortunate. In many, many ways, it was a terrible loss for me, losing my wife. A terrible loss. And, for my son to lose his mother. And it took us a long time to recover. But my son is doing really well. And I've been fortunate enough to have to meet another woman out here after all these years in Washington, who I'm, very, very close with. And in
Roger,
that sense, and have good friends. And
absolutely, you've made such a big impact on our town, and besides your legal work as a friend of so many people, you got involved in a club. You play golf with the guys.
Yeah,
I know you're at St. Albans tennis. You got a full life.
Yeah, and don't forget that Wednesday night poker game.
Oh,
which every now and then I see you show up for.
Well, I come for the food, Roger. You know that. I know who has the best food and when they serve it and so forth. But I used to play all the time, and I said one time to Janice, I said, $85 for a sandwich is not worth it.
No, I know that. Tommy Giacomo, from the Palm, used to go we used to go to the racetrack at Laurel every Thanksgiving, and there was about 10 or 12 of us that would go every Thanksgiving.
He loves
morning.
the track.
Okay, so now Thanksgiving morning they open the track up like 9:30 in the morning. You can only imagine who's at the racetrack 10 o'clock in the morning or 9 o'clock in the morning on Thanksgiving morning. So Tommy Giacomo and I and a bunch of guys would go, and we'd inevitably lose money. We would walk out of the racetrack. They would give you, on Thanksgiving morning, they'd give you a choice. You want a mince pie or a pumpkin pie? And we'd look at each other and say, how much did your pie cost you today? My pie cost me about $400. How much did your pie cost?
But you had a wonderful time.
We always had
with
fun.
Tommy Giacomo.
Yeah.
Well, Tommy's going to be sitting in that seat. I mean, it was great to see you the other night at our kickoff of our town, and it's great that we have an opportunity to have you in our town. And it's great, Roger. I keep using that word. I shouldn't do great, but it's a fact that you're very important to us and to our town. And I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so glad you'll stay. And please try to listen to us, to Bill Rigardi. In spite of what he says, he's got talent.
Oh no, I know. In spite of himself, he's got a great deal of talent, and he's been important to Washington.
Good luck to UCLA. They got the big game coming up, and then they got to play USC.
That's right. I'll be out there for that
Where they play this
game.
year in the Coliseum?
No, they play in the Rose Bowl, and I'll be
your
there.
Game.
I'll be out there.
Oh, that's life. Thank you. This is Roger Cossack. This is Andy Ockershausen, and this is Our Town.
You've been listening to Our Town Season 1 with your host, Andy Ockershausen. New Our Town podcast episodes are released each Tuesday and Thursday. We welcome your comments and suggestions on how you like the show or who you'd like to hear from next. Catch us on Facebook at Our Town DC or visit our website at OurTownDC.com. Our special thanks